Most attorneys lose the enrollment conversation before it even starts, not in the argument, not in the facts, but in the first 20 seconds. And it's not because they lack skills. It's because they walk into the conversation the same way every client does, emotionally unregulated, uncertain, and ready to react. Legal strategists don't do that. Legal strategists control the room. In this series, I will share with you the strategic, psychological, and emotional frameworks that thousands of successful attorneys use to enroll clients consistently, without chasing and without people pleasing. Every client conversation has an emotional temperature, and if you don't set it, the client will. When a client is anxious, overwhelmed, scared, angry, most attorneys unintentionally match that energy. They mirror the panic, they absorb the emotion, and without realizing it, they lose authority before they even say their first sentence. But legal strategists operate differently. They don't enter the client's chaos. They prepare the space before and shape the space the moment the call begins. How? By building something I call the four contextual walls. These walls create the psychological and structural containers that keep the conversation grounded, focused, and under your leadership. These four walls establish your authority, clarity, your tone, and the legal priorities that matters most. Before the client tells their story, before they pour their emotions, before they spiral, you've already built the room they're walking into. I'm going to show you exactly how to construct these four walls in less than 20 seconds using the opening lines of your enrollment script. Because once you control the first 20 seconds, you control the entire conversation. How legal strategists control the room. Let's build the walls. Before you go further, there's something you need to understand about every client conversation you will ever have. It's called emotional hijacking. Emotional hijacking is what happens when fear becomes the leader of the conversation, and you and the client follow it. And once fear is in the lead, the entire interaction collapses and your authority evaporates. Every conversation has a center of gravity. Most attorneys never claim it. They walk into a call already reacting to the client's fear, to the urgency, to the chaos. And the moment you react, you lose the room. When a client shows up spiraling, most attorneys match their energy. They absorb the fear, they mirror the overwhelmed, they start rushing, defending, explaining, not because they're weak, obviously, right? But because they never learned a different way. Legal strategists operate from a different center. They don't enter the chaos, they shape the environment. They build the four invisible walls the moment the call begins. These walls aren't about controlling the client, they're about stabilizing the space. You speak slower, you breathe deeper, you frame the issues, you establish the purpose. And something shifts. The client stops spiraling, they start matching your state, they follow your lead because you created the container. Every conversation has a center. Most people never hold it. They step into the interaction already reacting to someone else's fear, someone else's urgency, and someone else's emotional world. And when you let other people's emotions set the tone, you're no longer leading the conversation, you're following it. That's emotional hijacking. Fear takes over, and both you and the client get pulled into its momentum. These legal strategists do something different. They lead with what matters, not the story, not the facts, not the problem the clients think they have. What matters first is the emotional state, the environment, the energy field you're creating and the client is stepping into, your emotional state. Everything begins and ends with you. If you're grounded, the conversation stays grounded. If you're regulated, they regulate. If your tone is slow, stable, and sure, the client stops spiraling and matches your pace. But if you come rushing, defending, absorbing the panic, you've already lost. Fear takes the lead and you follow. This is why the first moment matters. You're not managing a conversation, you're managing a state, your state. Lead with what matters. your presence, your tone, your internal clarity, and the first half of the emotional hijacking disappears. There's a reason conversation slips out of your hands so quickly. It isn't mindset, it isn't personality, it's biology. Every human, in every human, there are two systems working at different speeds, the emotional brain and the thinking brain. The emotional brain, the amygdala, fires first, always. It reacts half a second before even logic wakes up. Half a second doesn't sound like much, but in human behavior, it's everything. That's why fear takes over a conversation so easily, while clients' anxiety can pull you into their spiral, while you feel the urge to speed up, defend, or prove yourself. You're not broken, you're human. This is not a personality flaw, it's how your nervous system was designed. Emotion moves fast, logic arrives late. But here's what legal strategists understand. Biology doesn't get the final say. Emotional leadership overrides biology. When you regulate your tone, when you slow your breath, when you anchor your presence, you interrupt the half-second reflex. You create space. You take the will back from the emotional brain, and the client unconsciously follows you out of the spiral. That's how you lead the room, by mastering the state that biology tries to hand you. Edification. People decide who you are long before you open your mouth. They do it through the frame you enter with, the energy you carry, the expectations you set without saying a word. That's edification, not hype, not performance, just positioning. Edification is simple. The client should already feel your credibility before you speak. Someone else sets the frame. Someone also introduces your value. Someone else elevates the room you're about to walk into. Why? Because when the frame is built for you, you don't have to spend the conversation proving yourself. And here's where most attorneys get trapped. They try to introduce themselves with, I'm experienced, I've handled hundreds of cases, I know what I'm doing, I'm the expert here. That's self-edification. And the moment you feel the need to say it, you've already lost the room. The impulse to prove yourself is not confidence. It's a symptom, a signal, a subtle form of emotional hijacking. It means the client's fear is leading the interaction. It means you absorb their insecurity and you're starting to respond to it. When you feel compelled to validate yourself, you're no longer leading, you're reacting. Self-edification always comes from the same place, a nervous system trying to get its footing, trying to regain control, trying to be seen, valued, respected. But real authority doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need justification. It doesn't fill the silence with a resume. Quiet authority is quiet. It's transmitted, not explained. That's why proper edification matters. Someone else frames your values, someone else establishes the credibility, and someone else has built the expectation. You walked in without performing, without chasing approval, without scrambling for validation. You walk in already trusted. And when you no longer need to edify yourself, you're no longer hijacked. You're leading. The principle of non-negotiable credibility. Credibility isn't something you say, it's something you are. And the moment you put your credibility on the table, the moment you try to explain it, justify it, or convince someone of it, credibility that needs permission isn't credibility. It's negotiation. The principle of non-negotiability credibility is simple. Don't put your authority up for discussion. Take it off the table completely. Because the second you hand it to the client to evaluate, you shift from leader to applicant. People don't feel confidence because you talk about it. They feel it because you embody it. And here's the truth most attorneys avoid. If you lack confidence, it is felt. It means you don't have it. Not in that moment, not in their tone, not in your presence. Confidence is not loud. It's not performative. It doesn't show up with a declaration. Confidence is invisible. You don't notice it directly. but you definitely notice its effects. The room feels calmer, the pace slows, and the client breathes differently. Their nervous system mirrors your stability. This is non-negotiable credibility. When you stop putting your value on the table, you start leading the room. Once you learn to regulate your own state, the next level is regulating the space between you and the client. This is where emotional leadership begins. The principle of energetic leadership states whoever controls the tone controls the trajectory. Clients don't arrive in their calmest form. They arrive deregulated, anxious, uncertain, carrying the weight of life that feels too heavy to hold. Your job isn't to match their energy. Your job is to lead. When your tone becomes slow, grounded, and deliberate, you disrupt their emotional chaos and replace it with stability. Tone is not a sound. Tone is leadership. The disrupt and replace protocol. Don't mirror their storm. Become their anchor. Negative emotion spreads fast. Fear spreads faster. If you mirror the client's panic, you amplify it. So you're going to do the opposite. You're going to disrupt the emotional pathway with a slower pace, a calmer voice, a steady breath. Your regulation becomes the environment. Their nervous system responds to the stability you project. This is how you become the anchor in somebody else's storm. The emotional containment rule. Take nothing in, transmit everything out. Most attorneys absorb the client's fear, they internalize the anxiety, they carry the frustration, they mistake empathy for emotional fusion. But containment is different. Containment means you create a buffer, a stable field where the emotion doesn't penetrate your system. You feel compassion without losing clarity. You hear their fear without becoming their fear. This is how strategic legal professionals stay centered while the clients unravels. The emotional mirror reversal principle. Whatever you project, they reflect. People think clients mirror them slowly. They don't. They mirror you instantly. If you project calm certainty, they absorb it. If you project structure, the chaos organizes. If you project quiet confidence, they stabilize. You set the emotional temperature of the entire interaction. The confidence transfer doctrine. Confidence is a transferable asset. You give it before they feel it. Clients borrow their first sense of confidence from you. When your tone is slow, steady, and assured, your confidence transfers into their system. They feel it before they understand it. They mirror it before they can explain it. Confidence is taught. Confidence is caught. This isn't psychology. This is biology. It is the antidote to emotional contagion and is the foundation of emotional leadership. The authority principle. There's a second solution to the emotional hijacking. It's simple, it's ancient, and it's built into how humans decide who to follow. It's called the authority principle. It's behavioral science. The authority principle says this: people are more likely to trust, comply, and follow the person they perceive as not knowledgeable, competent, and in a position of expertise. Authority isn't force, it isn't dominance, it's recognition. And in your case, this isn't perceived knowledge, it's actual knowledge. You spent years and years studying law. You survived the rigor and the horror of the bar. You didn't stumble into it. You've earned it. You have the authority. This is a fact, a given. There is nothing you need to prove, nothing you need to justify or edify, nothing you need to perform. You don't gain authority by talking about it. You lean on it by being it. The authority principle is built on three things: authority, clarity, issue framing. The way you enter the conversation, the way you set the structure, the way you guide what matters first. When authority is established early, resistance dissolves, cooperation rises, the client relaxes into your leadership. Authority isn't demanded, it is demonstrated through tone, structure, through presence. When you show up grounded, clear, and confident, the client mirrors your stability, because real authority isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't need validation. Real authority, it's quiet and it's undeniable. So if authority isn't something to explain and isn't something you ask for, how do legal strategists establish it? Not with resume, not with a pitch, not with a monologue about how long you've practiced. Authority is established in the first 20 seconds, not by what you say, but how you enter the interaction. The tone you use, the clarity you lead with, the structure you set, the emotional state you transmit, these are the signals the clients read before their minds even process your words. In these first moments, you're not presenting your authority, you're embodying it, and embodiment is what the clients respond to. So let's break this down. Here's how legal strategists establish authority in the first 20 seconds of every conversation. Now that we've talked about emotional leadership, let me give you the exact structure that allows you to lead the room before the conversation even begins. I call these the 4 contextual walls. They're invisible, but once you build them, the entire interaction changes. The 4 contextual wall. The wall of authority is 1. Remember, authority isn't performance, isn't dominance. It's clarity of role, clarity of expertise, clarity of direction. Clients in crisis are looking for someone who knows the way forward. If you don't take that position immediately, they'll unconsciously try to take it for you. And when the clients lead from fear, the conversation collapses into chaos. So the wall of authority begins with these simple lines. Hi, my name is Sue. I'm over at Awesome Law Firm. Slow, professional, unapologetic. No hedging, no explaining, no proving. Authority isn't requested, it is transmitted. 2, the wall of clarity. Authority comes with clarity. Clarity lowers anxiety. It reduces panic. It stops the conversation, the client, from spiraling into their story and losing themselves in the details. So you define the frame of clarity by making these statements. We receive your request for legal assistance with your, let's say, family law issues. Do you have 10 to 15 minutes to speak with me? Purpose, time boundary, scope. Clarity replaces uncertainty, and uncertainty is what drives fear. 3, the wall of tone regulation or emotional containment. It's not what you say. It's how you say it. Your voice becomes the emotional field the client steps into. When your tone is slow, calm, and grounded, you create stability in their nervous system. When your tone matches their fear, you amplify it. This is where disrupt and replace begins. You regulate the space with using their name gently, slowing your cadence, asking for a pen. Do you have something to write with? Structure activates their thinking brain. Tone regulates their emotional brain. You become the anchor they mirror. The last wall, the wall of issue framing. Once the emotional field is established, you guide the conversation into what matters first, not their story, not their panic, not the 100 details flooding their minds. You start here. Do you have any pending court dates? Do you have an attorney? These questions do 3 things. They identify urgency, they define the legal posture, they demonstrate your competency instantly. When you decide what matters most, the client follows your structure. Issue framings organizes the call around actual priorities, not emotional noise. When these four walls are in place, the conversation has a container: authority, clarity, tone, priority. This is how legal strategists control the room. It's really that simple. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll see you soon in the next video.